All right, good evening and welcome to Kivumbi2017. This is the last part of the show. Starts at 10 o'clock, just about, up to 11 o'clock. And here we speak to the politicians, the people in the front line in this conversation about the election that is now just about 40 days away. And as we promised last night, tonight we have yet again the two gentlemen who couldn't finish their conversation last night. And this is Professor Anyang' Nyong'o and former Cabinet Minister Amos Kimunya, who is running for parliamentary seat in Kipipiri. Professor Anyang' Nyong'o, of course, is running for governor in the county of Kisumu. And today the shoe is on the other foot, as we said, gentlemen. NASA launching its manifesto just about 2 hours or so ago. Professor Nyong'o, Amos has been waiting for you because he says that you have said very many things, but at the end of the day said very little.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yes.
First of all, my apologies. The traffic was terrible on Gong Road, so
He's the reason our show started late.
I tried to. Actually, I left early, but couldn't beat the traffic. So, but I think the launch today was very good because we laid down, as I said yesterday, the foundation for the implementation program we are going to have in the government. You remember I said yesterday, we must make a difference between a manifesto as a body of values, and then you come to an implementation program. Now, of course, we have a second document which deals with implementation. When we get to government, how are we going to implement the broad principles that we are committed ourselves to here? And this is what we launched today. And so I think it covers very important issues. For example, you cannot really go far unless you create a strong nation. This whole issue of inclusiveness, this whole issue of dealing with past wrongs.
So let's jump right into this so that we start our conversation. Yeah. And one of the things that you're talking about in terms of this whole thing of reconstructing the nation, as you call it, is the question of language. You've talked about establishing a National Languages Council or something like that to promote indigenous languages and Kenyan Sign Language. What is that about?
Well, that is about exactly what you talk about. You know, Kenya is a multicultural nation, and language is a very important instrument for nation building. We were brought up, Amos and I, of course I'm much older than him, in a colonial system that tried to downplay indigenous languages, and thereby making people kind of lose their identities. And we feel very strongly that the mosaic of the Kenyan culture is expressed both in their cultures and their languages. And there are two languages at the moment which unite us, Kiswahili and English, which of course we can't do away with. They are very important languages. But within that context, we must create room for strengthening our different languages so that people don't lose their
What does
cultures.
that mean? What is strengthening? People speak them right now,
people
don't they?
People speak them, but by the way, people speak them. Do you realize that our children are losing them? Because we don't have institutions that make sure that our children grow up, they don't lose those languages. Now, if you go to Israel, it's very interesting that the Jews have very strong institutions that make sure that whether you live in America or in Asia or whatever, you'll never be deprived of your Hebrew, okay? And you'll never be deprived of your Hebrew culture. And yet that doesn't mean that you're not universal. You're still a universal person, but a universal person with a very strong cultural foundation. That was what we mean. For example, in Kisumu County, where I'm going to be governor, we have all kinds of cultural institutions that our kids know about, all kinds of historic institutions that have played a very important role. If you read stories, for example, Gitembagi, Ugende Mokomagluo, which I may have to translate into English. Simply means their customs and customs and traditions, and then.
Kimunya, you wouldn't have a problem with that, would you?
No.
This whole language thing.
And then when
that's already you don't need a government for that.
No. But you see,
because it's government does not want to become an nanny state. to start micromanaging families and telling them what language they need to teach their children.
We don't do that.
And I think the important thing is, what I'm finding a problem with is that as we are moving towards national integration, I would have actually thought that debate about Swahili, I liked about it, you know, promoting Swahili.
So you have a problem
online,
with NASA promoting cultural languages and coming up with a sort of framework within government to make sure these languages live.
That's already
and
happening.
don't
That's
die.
what I'm saying. It's already happening. You don't need a government to do that. I don't need to elect a government to do that. You know, because that's already happening. Now, I think the biggest problem we have as a country...
If you can respond to that and tying it with the fact that we are coming to a place where a lot of Kenyans don't even speak their mother tongue, not necessarily because they don't want to, but it's cross-cultural.
No, it's not choice.
Cross-cultural marriages. You have people living in urban areas and they don't have access to their language.
That's the whole point. That's the whole point, Joe. It's not really by choice. It's by lost opportunities. Because, for example, when I was growing up, when I was in primary school, we were actually taught Luo as a subject.
But that's because you probably grew up in a village in Seme, right?
No, but so if I grew up in a town, why can't I be taught my language? We have the CCK, Christian Council Kenya, up there on the hill. We teaches these languages to people, but that is the only place. What we are saying is that rather than confine that thing to only 2 places in Nairobi, which is there's a language center in Kilimani, and then there's CCK there. On NCCK, I don't know which.
CPK.
Whatever it is, CPK. Really, and, you know, these things require resources, require facilities. And churches don't have so much money to devote to this kind of thing. And what we are saying is that rather than leave an important cultural responsibility simply to churches and to the private sector, the government is there to create an environment, an institutional mechanism to make sure that culture is preserved. So when I'm saying that that is already being done, it's being done in such small proportions. And that is why I fear that in the next 50 years, certain languages may actually disappear. Now, look, the American Indians are now beginning to recreate their languages because the American imperialism did away with those languages. And they are feeling really let down that their cultural heritage was lost through a very cruel system of local imperial rule by the white race.
Okay,
now, we don't want this kind of thing to happen to our people.
We have a lot of grounds to cover, so I would like us to move along quickly.
Yeah.
And you mentioned something that appears to be a change of system of government that you're proposing, something to the effect of sort of hybrid system or moving closer towards bombers. Is there something you want to do with the system of government, or is that...
Well, if you know what we have always wanted, really, in multicultural societies like ours, if you read a lot of literature, a presidential system is the wrong type of system. In any case, presidential systems of government are putting a lot of societies to problems today. They tend to be imperial. You see what I mean? They tend to go towards centralization. Now, one good thing about the Constitution of 2010 is that we have devolution. But when we were going to Naivasha, at least as DODM, we went there with a mission to have a parliamentary system, which is very different from a presidential system. We ended up having a hybrid, partly parliamentary, partly presidential, a kind of a mule of a government, which is giving us a lot of problems. You can see what have been going on.
So what exactly do you want?
What we want
Just
really
explain
is
it clearly,
go towards a parliamentary system of government.
Amos, parliamentary system, do you think that will work?
I think that's where we came from. And Kenyans voted and said they don't want the parliamentary
In fairness,
system.
that wasn't the
We had a parliamentary system modeled along the Commonwealth system.
Yeah.
You mean, at independence?
No, even as of 2010. And then it was, we also had the presidential.
System, the president
so we kind of mixed,
very powerful.
The only thing, we didn't have a king, right?
No.
We had a president instead. So you had the executive, or the president instead of a prime minister, right? And the cabinet coming from parliament and all that.
But the president was directly elected. People universal suffrage to
Everyone
get the president.
The president even had to be a member of parliament.
Yeah, but he was elected directly.
He was elected directly. So it's just a modified parliamentary system. Okay.
It's not modified. It's not really modified. It's
his argument from what I've been reading, just so that I give context to this. His argument seems to be that the current system that we have, our presidential system, creates a certain kind of competition, but also does not give room for parties to necessarily campaign in the whole country. They could bunch up 3 different ethnic groups, and that their job
but
is done.
But you see, the Constitution is very clear. You cannot win a presidential system unless you have won 25% in at least 24 counties, right? But so you need a 25% majority in at least 24 countries in addition to the 50+1, right? So that on its own, first of all, makes sure that you must be popularly elected in a majority of the counties, right? And that was brought in to avoid that mischief of people kind of coalescing together and taking over the presidency. But going back to
right
Naivasha,
now, we have exactly that with respect to Mheshimiwa Kimunya, because what we have right now,
was
and the two of you can disagree if you want, but the truth of the matter is that right now what we have is people basically just banding up large communities and forming coalitions and that sort of thing.
And that's exactly the same thing that will happen.
There is no chance in the current scenario of someone from Turkana, for example, being president. It is almost unthinkable. Is that not true?
But the same thing that will happen even if you have a parliamentary system is the same communities that will send members of parliament into parliament. And it's the members of parliament who will then elect one of their own to be the prime minister or the president if you go through that route anyway.
Really.
And it's the numbers that will count.
Not really.
Right? Professor Nyong.
Not really.
Yeah.
See, the qualitative...
Why a parliamentary system? Why can't people just go out there and elect the person that they want to be president of the whole country?
Yeah.
By the way, Joe, systems of government are crafted by human beings for certain purposes. So you can't let them happen by chance. A parliamentary system of government is very different from what we have here. First of all, a parliamentary system of government will give room for political parties to grow. Political parties will go out there to compete for votes, so that the party which means the majority of votes will form a government. In a multicultural society like ours, and it has been proven in so many societies, even Israel, by the way, those so known multicultural, but India is the best. Multicultural, multiracial, multi-ethnic, multi-everything. When you go, and India is a very stable democracy, by the way. If India did not have a parliamentary system of government, India would have boiled a long time ago, would have broken down. And Canada is another one. In a parliamentary system of government, you go out there as a political party, you appeal for votes. The likelihood that you will spread your wing to as many aspects of society as possible are very high. The likelihood that you will see coalitions with other political parties form a government, that will be much more inclusive, is very high. So the likelihood that you will have 2 communities or 3 communities banding together all the time is very low.
But Amos makes a fair point that you are still required to get 25%
but that,
at least in
that was because you are trying to cure the mischief of an imperial president. So you bring in kind of a check.
Yeah.
But that check is so artificial that it can be broken very easily by 2 communities getting together with very large numbers and intimidating individuals from all other countries, making a government. It's basically a 2-community affair, you see, and therefore dominating a government and having a lot of conflict in society. This is what you're trying to avoid. If you read a lot of literature on parliamentary governance, as opposed to quasi-presidential system of government, in multicultural societies, you will find that you are better off having a parliamentary system of government than a presidential or a semi-presidential system of government. And by the way, if you look at democracies which have survived longest in the world, the parliamentary system of government.
Yes,
look at Britain, look at India, look at Canada, look at New Zealand, and they are much more stable. They develop very fast. They are much more fair in terms of social justice and equity. Look at America, presidential system, an extremely divided society. You saw it in the last election. Extremely divided. One would have expected that after more than 200 years of independence, the U.S. should not have an election which is very similar to Kenya's in 2007. It shouldn't.
Yeah, but I think one of the things we must also be careful about, and we saw this happen in 1992, we saw this happen in 1997. Immediately we reintroduced multi-party democracy in Kenya because of the fear that, or the want by some people to control who gets elected into parliament to only come from a certain community. We started seeing communities resident in a certain area being displaced so that they do not even have that. For example, a Kikuyu will never be a candidate in Nyanza and get elected, right? Because people use their numbers and chase away people who think they are going to dilute their majority in parliament. So for national cohesion, a parliamentary system in Kenya is very dangerous because we are going to get a situation where people are going to be told to go back to your original lands and get voted there. And we already started seeing signs of that with the recent statements that were made. Probably as a precursor to some of the constitutional amendments that are envisaged. So that when we go that route, then people will then have been told that you Kikuyus, you Kisis, you
but that
people
can happen
within...
That can happen even now.
No, within a presidential...
Even the current constitution dispensation.
No, within a presidential system...
I mean, if you want to deal with the 25%...
Within a presidential system, you can vote for your president from wherever you are.
Yeah, but you might not meet the 25%
The 25% threshold, the 25% is only within 24 counties. And it's unlikely that people will be displaced across the entire... Unless it's total chaos.
But
But there's a very real danger when you now say that we want our seat in parliament, and that seat is unique to us as a certain community, yeah? And that's exactly what happened. That's what triggered the chaos in 1992. That triggered the chaos in 1997.
That's not because...
And that was cured by then saying, let the president be universal.
No, but that
what actually caused the universal election of governors?
Let Prof make his point.
We started electing governors on a universal basis because of the same issues of a few people being locked up. You know, remember the council was being locked up in a hotel to go and elect a mayor? Right? So let's not go that route. Kenyans have already decided on the constitution that they would like, and I think at this point,
this will still be through a referendum. But Prof, exactly. What was your point?
But my point is that, you see, what Amos is talking about happened under presidential system of government in Kenya, not a parliamentary system. The only time we had a parliamentary system of government, but Amos wasn't born, so maybe he doesn't know, it's 1963.
I was born then.
Well, Ben, you should have known. Maybe you were 2 years. Now, in 1963, by the way, do you realize that Chingoneko was elected in Nakuru?
Yes. And Tomboy in Nairobi.
And Tomboy in Nairobi.
Yes.
And what? Amir Jamal in Kisumu.
Yes.
So many people were elected because we had a parliamentary system of government. Kenyatta was a prime minister. KANU and KADU and other parties were competing for votes everywhere. Yeah. And by the way, the 1963 election is the only democratic election we had before we had the NAC election in 2002. And the reason why we had the NAC election in 2002 is because for the first time Kenyans said, we have had enough of the presidential system. Let us get together and get rid of this presidential system. And they went to bomb us. The first bomber's draft, and it is still there, voted overwhelmingly for a parliamentary system of government. Yes. When we went to Naivasha, the selfishness of parliamentarians, because they want their man to be president,
exactly,
turned that thing into a presidential system. Because only
each of the two sides realized we have a chance to become president. Kibaki will not be president for life. ODM said, now we have our chance. The next president will be Raila Odinga. So let's go for presidential system.
That's the point, and some of us opposed it.
But the reality has come to sink that Raila is unlikely to become president of this country. So now we are clamoring for a prime minister position. And for all these other positions that you guys have agreed on, and you now want to change the whole constitution for purposes of just meeting some selfish needs of 5 principles in NASA. Let's not get the people.
By the way,
to fill the jobs for NASA. So that the NASA as a coalition can hold. Because with all these positions, it will disintegrate. Right?
Look, Ajoageo, I would hold this position as I've always held it. I've always held this position in 1960s, in 1970s. Even when I have left politics, I will hold this position because I do believe, from a purely intellectual point of view, and from a tremendous wealth in history of evidence that in multicultural societies like ours, whether it is in Kenya, India, New Zealand, America, whatever, and the Americans are now crying for a parliamentary system of government anyway. A parliamentary system of government is fairer, much more democratic, is much amenable to equity and social justice. Look at Sweden, look at Norway. All these things are parliamentary system of government.
Can we go back to the manifesto?
Okay,
we can take this debate on a different day.
Can we move on? Well, that was from the manifesto. But let's move on to education.
Yeah.
And that is also an
or even before we move to the, because I think our pet subject also on this devolution.
Yeah.
We say we give 45% of the revenue
to the counties.
Right?
Yeah.
But when you look at the health, which is a devolved function, we're also saying that we'll give 15%, we are going to spend 15% of the total budget on health.
In line with the Abuja declaration.
In line with the Abuja declaration, which was an amorphous declaration by some NGOs. Now,
it was not by NGOs.
It was NGOs who proposed the matter, and then it was adopted by President sitting there. And when we went, it's something I've gone through several times. There was 15% for health, 10% for housing, so different percentages until when you add them up, what's
the problem?
But the whole point is,
what is the problem?
You put 15% of the total expenditure to health, right? Now, then health is a devolved function. Then you're saying you give 45% of the budget of the revenue to the devolved counties. There's still another 13 functions.
Professor Nyong'o, is the 15% part of the 45, or is it something else?
It can't be.
By the way,
it will take like 20%.
By the way, it's very interesting that I'm so worried about it. If you go to Norway, you find 75% of the revenue goes to the devolved government.
Because about all the functions are devolved.
Yeah.
But here we have only 14 functions that are devolved. All the other functions are not devolved.
And if you look at the functions which are devolved, I pointed out this the other day in an article in the Star. If you look at the functions which are devolved, those are functions where the rubber touches the ground anyway, where service is delivered to people, where most money should go anyway. I mean, if you take let me just finish. Yeah. That interruption, I don't like it. If you take the Ministry of Health, quite honestly, 90% of health is devolved. What is left in half your house, really, is policy making a regulation and running these referral facilities, which facilities make money for themselves, by the way, if they're well run. So what you can do is what the present constitution says, give them conditional grants. If we can give conditional grants to New Nyanza General Hospital, teaching a referral hospital, we can give conditional grants to Kenyatta National Hospital. We can give conditional grants to any other referral facility.
Which is what happens now.
Yeah, so the huge money that used to go to Kenyatta National before doesn't need to go there, because now it has been said that the Senate and the Treasury and the Controller of Budget and the Commissioner for Revenue Application sit down and decide how much conditional grants to give to these facilities. So if you do that and look at it, you'll find that actually what needs to remain in the national government is 10 to 15% for health. And therefore, even when you add these percentages, like Amos is trying to add them, they make sense. Because if you take 45 and plus 15, that's 60. So if we are talking about only 60%, for most functions which are devolved, and I'm saying as far as concerned, health should get 90, we are actually being very conservative. In NASA, if I was to dictate policy in NASA, I would say that health should go 90% to counties. But at the moment, I don't have that kind of power to do so. Yeah. So we compromise with 60, which Ahmad thinks is too high. It is not. Because in Norway, it's 75.
Let's move on to other issues, because the numbers, I think, don't quite add up.
They do add up. You have not cared to add up.
When I also look at the devolution, I think one of the other things is, I don't know to what extent the Prof and your team, in drafting this manifesto, I'm actually not sure how much of the testing of the reality on the ground is. Because you're promising to collaborate with the governors to transfer functions on a phased period when all the functions have already been transferred as of 2015, right? So either NASA doesn't know what is actually happening on the ground, that the governors, the county governments have already been transferred with the full functions, and is promising to actually do it when you get elected, things that have already been done. And it's a series of so many other things. We're going to have the police ratios to be in accord.
Let's be a bit systematic, Amos, here. Yeah. The question of devolution, because I think that it's a big topic that we cannot finish. The two issues that I thought were standing out for me is this whole system of government and then the 45 that you have touched on. Yes. But I want us to move very quickly to education because you had a big argument about it the other day. We have seen what Jubilee has proposed. We've seen what NASA is proposing today. And they've said that they'll immediately implement free secondary education, which was a big debate yesterday. But there's something else they're saying, that they will scrap the school laptop project and redirect the money towards building computer labs and libraries in schools. Professor Nyong'o.
You see, computer labs and libraries is much more inclusive than just giving laptops. We have seen a big problem with laptops. And if you have been following the news, even yesterday, you find a lot of problems with laptops. If you give kids laptops, you have not trained the teachers.
So the teachers have been trained?
No.
90,000 teachers.
Well,
let him finish.
I'm telling you because yesterday there was news on the TV where people were saying, well, we don't know how to use this thing. And therefore, there's also an issue of backup systems for making the laptop project sustainable. If you create labs are much more sustainable because you did science. Once you have a lab, there's an institutional mechanism by which equipment is maintained, serviced, and so on. And when the equipment is not there, it is replaced. You just give laptops to kids in a class which they take home. At the end of the school year, most likely kids will go away with the lost laptops. You have to buy new laptops for the next generation of kids. And this is a lot of money, by the way, and I don't think it is sustainable. If, like in school, when I was in primary school, we had a library. So all the English supplementary readers, whatever, they were the textbook of the supplementary readers. The textbook was standard books, the supplementary readers were in the library. You didn't take them anywhere. But they were there all the time for students to use. Now, this is the idea we have about having labs. Labs will be a center where you have scientific education based on computer science and all that. And laptops is just one aspect of it. But it will be done in a sustainable institutional framework, not a romantic thing that is dispensed to students and there's no sustainable way by which you can follow them and sustain it.
Amos Prof says laptops, kids can throw them away, can take them home and everything, that you're better off with something that is based in the school that the school can manage.
But you see, the whole point of getting these kids, it's the laptop program, and the investment that has been made in terms of local production and all that. All you want is throw all that away and now go back and buy some hard...
No, we are not throwing them away.
But that's what you say, scrap it.
We're scrapping the system. We're not scrapping the laptops. We're scrapping the romantic system in which they have been implemented. We are creating a new system which will incorporate in a much more sustainable manner. And we think that is a much more, less romantic, but more sustainable way of dealing with things.
So kids will share the computer instead of having it.
No. The laptops are still there, but it will be within a library system, with a laboratory system.
Yes.
You see, connected with other things. Things are not. Kids should not be confined to laptops. Kids should know more. Kids are very inquisitive. They should know about laptops, computers. In my house, for example, we bring the
laptop as a computer, Prof.
No. I'm saying.
And it has the same functions as a big computer desktop.
I'm saying the desktop and so on. I mean, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
You see, in my house, for example, you're doing what we call the tablets.
Yeah.
Very soon they've exhausted all those software in the tablets. They want to go to other things. And they say, Daddy, go and get me what, a desktop or something like that. They want to graduate. And these kids are very fast, by the way. Yeah. And it is very interesting that the speed with which they can junk equipment. I don't want to junk them. You want them to be in an institution where other kids can be back. We'll use them, you see. So a kid will get this thing you're giving them. what do you call it? The thing you're crazy about.
So are you saying, because I think we need to understand exactly what you're promising here, because the government has invested in this project and there is a local dimension of it, working with universities to manufacture or to assemble these things. So what exactly is that going to
we are
mean?
not. We'll be stupid. We'll be stupid to say we throw that away. No. We are saying we want to institutionalize it within a system of education that lays emphasis in laboratory, at the laboratory as an institution. Institutionalizing scientific education in schools, beginning with primary school, which is not a romantic way of giving kids tablets.
So you'll continue with laptops, but within a lab,
within that kind of
well, they're actually tablets, not laptops. But
the tablets and laptops.
No, they're tablets, they're not laptops. You see, that's the point. That you see, when you just live in tablets, you think you're giving kids things, laptops, but you're not.
Now, let's get on the free secondary education, because I want some clarification. Because what I had is there will be uniforms, free uniforms, there will be free books, there will be desks.
Professor, yesterday we were talking about the Jubilee Manifesto. They said they will have free day, public day secondary school education.
Now, you promise free education.
What exactly, in very clear terms,
free secondary education?
Are you promising?
What does it include? I had during the launch.
I must let him respond, please.
Yes, Amos had it correctly, actually.
Yeah, so it's
very correctly. When I went to Lance High School, I had free everything. I went there. My caution money was 5 shillings a term, I think. When I went there,
you must be pretty old, Prof.
Okay.
I'm not supposed to say that. I went there, and everything was there.
Everything was provided?
Sure.
So you want to provide everything?
Yeah.
So that is free boarding, free uniform, free books, everything?
Everything.
Everything will be provided?
Sure.
Do you have funding for that?
We do.
How much is it going to cost?
60 billion extra.
How much?
60 billion extra to what you're spending now, and we'll do it. And that is in our implementation plan. We have a second document, by the way, which is, I told you, the implementation framework.
Which we don't have yet.
You don't have it because it's an implementation.
Yes, but
I told you.
But that is exactly what will show. You know, the devil is in the detail. And the issue is, there's lots of promises in this manifesto. Very rosy picture being painted. But when you now come to ask yourself, how is this going to be financed, right? There's no indication as to how the national revenue is going to be expanded.
I wish.
Because you are getting away from borrowing. You are getting away from higher taxation.
And they're lowering taxes, by the way.
And you are lowering taxes.
We are getting away from
if you are lowering taxes,
commercial borrowing.
No, if you are lowering taxes, you are running away from borrowing. You are increasing the spend, right? Now, surely, how do the numbers end up?
They add up, actually.
They can't.
No, but why do you say they can't?
They can't.
Because that's a kind of dogmatic
with
statement.
More expenditure and less revenue.
No. But
and
revenue
no
will
borrowing
increase.
to bridge the
You
gap.
remember when we started NAC government, David Moiraria and I in Treasury had a very very simple principle of increasing revenue. It was very simple. We say, reduce the tax rate, expand the tax base.
Yes.
What we said, get more people paying taxes, but don't hike up taxes.
But that's easier said than done. Like,
but it was done under NAC. It was done. And the revenues went up. By the way,
progressively, I know.
Yeah, it went up progressively. When we started the NAC government, the Kenya budget for 580 billion shillings only.
Yes.
When we got in there, within a matter of 2 years or 3 years, it had shot up 980 billion by that principle of reducing the tax rate and expanding the power tax base. A more efficient, less corrupt, less wasteful, cutting down this consumptive bureaucracy will do it.
But you see,
and it is there in our implementation program.
I agree with you. Yeah. But when I look at all these things and what we are saying, electrifying trains, the SGR, right?
But
okay, so let's move on. Let's move on. Now that you bring up this, let's talk infrastructure, and that's one of the things. Let's start with the SGR. What are you going to do with the SGR?
And I'm glad they have now taken it.
I had the former Prime Minister actually say that it's this phase that is being done now will go to some dead end called Naivasha. But what exactly are you going to do with the SGR? It is here with us. The current government says, well, there'll be a phase 2 from Nairobi to Naivasha. What's NASA saying?
The next phase, the current government says we'll reach Kisumu.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Well, they said Naivasha.
By the way, the original thing that we had in mind, that this during the NAC government, remember when I brought that German here, was to do an electric train, a high-speed electric train from Mombasa to Nairobi, Kisumu, going the way to Malaba, to Kampala, to Kigali, to Bujumbura, and eventually to Eastern Congo and through to West Africa. That was the original idea. But the first phase really was to take it from Mombasa to Kigali to Bujumbura, because then it makes sense through economies of scale. And by the way, this idea that we don't have enough electricity to have an electric train, it's bullshit. Let me tell you, sorry to use the word. Because you remember when we started NEPAD, Thabo Mbeki said there's enough hydropower in the Congo, and Thabo Mbeki had a plan of generating that hydropower and exporting it to East Africa and Southern Africa. That very much like the Chinese program, a Three Gorges program on the river Ganges, which increased electrical production tremendously in China. And on that electric, by the way, the hydropower production, China has been building 1,000 kilometers.
So in the interest of time, what are you going to do exactly?
So what we're going to do
with
the SGR, we would prefer the SGR to be electric train.
So is that what
and by the way,
is that what you're going to do?
Yes, because the Jubilee government itself has said that SGR can be transformed into an electric train, electric line. And we shall do that.
Should the need ever arise?
But the need has arisen.
Remember SGR. You know, it's a cargo.
What is the need? What do you mean when
it's
need
a cargo train? It's a cargo train. Yeah. For cargo, for purposes of haulage of cargo, you don't use electric trains. Yeah?
But why combine it?
Because the speed. You don't need fast speeds.
Why we also travel on it?
Human beings are not
for human beings, what more speed are you getting?
No, but human
between
beings
Mombasa to Nairobi.
Now,
you must also look at the terrain and all that. But the whole point is that what is the priority needs for development of this country? Is it the fancy electrification of the railway project when you already have 4.5 hours between Nairobi and Mombasa, or now opening up other areas? Okay. Now that's why I'm wondering between the bare basics, getting the Kelvin in Kibera who wanted better housing, and electrifying the train, right? Yeah, because I heard your testimonials of the young chap saying I've been in Kibera for 30 years.
Prof, why do you want to electrify the train?
When you're not even got the houses, when you're not got
something, Joage.
Yeah.
When I wrote my book, A Leap into the Future, you should read it very carefully.
Yeah.
We must leap into the future.
Yeah.
We should not be too conservative.
Yes.
When we are departing from the past,
yes,
we are walking like chicken and not flying with the eagles. We must fly with the eagles to belong to the future. If we do an electric train today, it will be much cheaper than waiting another 50 to 100 years.
Yeah.
China, by the way, since 1978, China was very backward in 1974. When Nixon went there in 1972, you should have seen what was happening in China.
Yeah.
In 1978, with a new change, China decided to leap into the future.
Yeah.
And it has done wonders.
Yeah.
A country which was third world in 1972. That's why I'm wondering, why should we be so conservative in doing things when there is enough solar power in Africa? Mm-hmm. There is enough hydropower in Africa.
I'm seeing a disconnect between Prof.
No.
Prof has very good ideas. In fact, he should be in Jubilee. Because what the manifesto that was being launched by NASA was saying, that we should avoid all these grandiose projects and concentrate on silos.
But we didn't say.
Yeah.
We didn't say.
But the electrification project stands out very clearly that it was probably put in there just to show that SGR has been done by Jubilee. We are going to electrify the SGR, okay? Just to make it look different. But in terms of the thinking behind it, I don't see any thinking within here, any detail within here, right?
Look,
I think perhaps we should move to another thing.
I don't think we're going very far, because Amos is determined not just to patronize me by asking me that, by saying rather condescendingly that I should be in Jubilee.
No.
Which I find
appreciating, because I know him. I know his potential. I know his potential. And I know Kisumu is going to have a very good governor.
Because Jubilee is the worst form of government that ever happened in this country. And I, as a Nyang Nyongo, would like to hold Jubilee with 1,000 kilometers of a stick away from me. Go to another question.
Wait till you see that we are converging in terms of the bigger picture.
All right, security. I saw that you're talking about a phased pullout of KDF from Somalia.
Yes. That has been my position right from the very beginning.
Yes.
And I said right from the beginning that was a mistake going to Somalia. I'm on record as having written it.
Yes.
Because I could see the
Well, the government's position has been, Prof, that we'll get out of Somalia when Somalia is... the phrase has been when the job is done.
When the enemy has been, when the threat has been exterminated.
But you see,
you don't fight enemies from the bankers.
You see,
right?
Jubilee should have learned from the Americans.
Yeah.
The Americans realized that you don't fight a guerrilla war with conventional warfare. You will never win. You don't. In Colombia, the Colombian government realized that trying to defeat the guerrillas in Colombia by conventional warfare will never win. They adopted a different strategy. Yeah? They had a completely different strategy of appeasing those guerrillas. Okay? Now, in the case of Americans in Vietnam, Kissinger, sitting with Lee Doctor there in Paris, learned, sadly, from Lee Doctor himself, that a guerrilla war cannot be defeated by a conventional army. The Kenyan went into Somalia, conventional warfare. Well, the guerrillas...
So if you get elected, what exactly can we expect
with
regard to...
We shall withdraw and bring our troops to the borders to maintain the integrity of our borders. The Somali, once you do that, the Somali people will sort out their problems. Because when you are there, first of all, our soldiers started trading in charcoal, started trading in sugar, started smuggling currency, all kinds of things. You saw it. The UN report was there. You can't deny it. But once you do that, you create conflict between our own soldiers and the Somali people. That's why we are being hit left, right, and center in our camps in there. Because they're retaliating. You're taking our business. The guy who was heading that camp was in cahoot with a Somali woman who betrayed him. Now, those are the kind of things when you stay in a place for too long.
But Joe, I think our problem with NASA and their total, I don't know what, they seem to heap all blames on our military. I mean, these guys are doing a splendid job, laying their lives on the risk to guard Kenya. And all you get is, the soldiers in Somalia are trading, the soldiers want to rig elections. Surely, let's appreciate that they're doing a good job.
We appreciate.
Right? And let's appreciate that they're out there to exterminate the terror. Kenyans are not the only soldiers in Somalia. We have a whole Amazon group. What are you basically saying?
So you don't think there should be a time frame to withdrawing them?
It's not a Kenyan effort. Kenya is only a contributor to the wider Amazon
well, that is because Kenya has an interest.
Kenya has an interest. It has an interest.
But
the whole world has an interest.
Should there be a time frame?
Because so long as terrorism, so long as piracy is taking place in Somalia, even the international maritime trade is under threat, right? So it's a joint effort. It's a joint international effort. And Kenya cannot unilaterally say, because we think our soldiers are trading in, or NASA says our traders our soldiers are trading charcoal, we should withdraw them from an international effort that is well calculated to combat terrorism on a global scale, because of the cells that are in Somalia and across.
But tell me something.
But we don't want to discuss the security issue on air, all right? Because of the sensitivity of it. But I think I would advise that that anyone looking at, anyone bothered about security of this country, should be very careful that we don't end up encouraging terrorism by withdrawing and getting our chops to be.
All I'm saying is the following. I would be the last to encourage terrorism because I've lost relatives in terrorist attacks. I would be the last to encourage terrorism. But I would like us to adopt a strategy of fighting terrorism that does not put our soldiers in unnecessary risk, and that does not put our soldiers under temptation they should avoid or they could avoid. So all I'm saying, we went there, Operation Linda Nchi, its original aim was go in there, strike at the Al-Shabaab and come back. And we did do that and went up to Kismayu. A wonderful job done. Sweeping job up to Kismayu, we did that. We should have now handed this thing over to international forces. Say, look, you people, we have done a good job for you. Now let's go to keep the maritime transport. Americans should be there, defending the Indian Ocean. But Americans made the mistake of going in there once and they were beaten. They ran away so fast they never came back.
No,
now, hold on. Now we, unfortunately, are being trapped in there, being convinced that by staying in there we can defeat the Al-Shabaab. Time and time again has proven that you cannot do that against guerrillas. So we have done our bit. Let us come back home, keep our borders, and tell the Somalis, by God, you have seen enough blood. Have a government of national reconciliation and rule your country. If they have a government of national unity bringing the Al-Shabaab, just like the president of Cote d'Ivoire has done, he brought everybody together who are fighting, said, look, I don't care who you fought for to, you are all in one government, we sing together, or we rise together. That's what the Somalis should do.
Okay. You'll respond in a minute. Let me just go to my colleagues who are standing by with some reactions that we've been getting on social media. Hassan Juma and Zinze Kibeko, what's going on out there?
Well, Joe, as you're having that conversation in studio again, people are very keen on it. We've seen comments streaming both on YouTube as well as on Twitter. Most of the hashtags that we're seeing, as you can see, we have our very own notifications board there. But as well as hashtag roadmap to Canaan is one of the biggest hashtags we've seen tonight as NASA was preparing to launch their manifesto, as well as hashtag NASA manifesto. And we just want to really go through some of them really quickly and just get a sense of what people are saying. Take a look at this one by Edward. How long can Kenya be a guinea pig of trials, especially when a clique loses out in a race? How long can we be hostages to personal desires? Well, that's one tweet from Edward. Any on your side, Hassan? This one. This is in regards to the issue of taxation that was just discussed, Hassan.
Yes, from, I think, Simon Kai, 5, I'm not wrong. Not realistic. What else can taxmen do beyond forcing me to make my returns as they do today?
Okay, so that's just in our notifications. Here on the roadmap to Canaan, one of the hashtags that we've been seeing, Gideon says, Baba, you have done it. Manifesto ni standard, a technical knockout for Jubilee, all right? So like we said yesterday when we were looking at the Jubilee manifestos, Hassan, we also saw other hashtags in relation to that, such as Jubilee manifesto lies, you know, things that are just countering this specific period. But also, NASA manifesto hashtag has also been trending, all right? Let's see. We discussed this one earlier.
Oh, yes.
Okay. So this one here says, by December says, a detailed analysis of IEBC voters' figures released today based on the 2013 vote patterns show NASA will beat Jubilee. That's a tweet rather by December over there. Gadara, you say it looks like NASA manifesto isn't about it isn't about
achievements,
but rather doing what Jubilee hasn't.
Few details on how though.
Okay, so a lot of feedback and sentiments coming in. Oh, we also have a tweet here by Dr. Pielo Lumumba, of course. He says the next term that Jubilee deserves is jail term, and he says Raila Odinga make sure they serve the next jail term. Now that tweet has already gotten 119 tweets in just a span of 2 hours. Okay. So that's a lot of the tweets that we've been seeing that are coming through as this what we are calling the battle of hashtags, really, as different political parties have already launched their manifestos, key ones, Jubilee and NASA. All right.
And there's one from Salome who says, Jubilee people, you are tweeting too much. Pause and listen to what a manifesto is not that beauty show you heard yesterday.
So, Hassan, before we even throw it back to Joe, would we kindly remind us what our Twitter poll question was today, the one that we were engaging our audience with?
Leo, tulikuwa tunauliza, ndio mambo yako haya.
Here we go.
Where was it?
Okay, of course, during our 9 p.m. bulletin, we had asked you, has the opposition played its role
effectively in the last 4 years?
Of course,
77% say yes, 23% say no.
That's out of 517 votes, to be more specific. But of course, also even during Kivumbi itself, I'm trying to look for our Twitter poll question earlier. We had multiple questions really asking the work that the opposition party has done. And whether they've really managed to get the job done as the opposition party. Hassan, would you happen to have it closer next to you?
Huh?
Okay. No problem. We will find it. in just a few minutes. Of course, this is a lot of the feedback that we've been getting from our 9 p.m. bulletin, but really, okay, so we can, wow, it must be all the way huko chini, but no problem.
Ama tuyangazie kesho kwa zilizala. Ni sawa tu, haina shida.
All right, no problem. Okay. So that's been a lot of the feedback that we've been getting from you guys, especially our online audience, in regards to tonight's conversation when NASA launched their manifesto. Yesterday it was Jubilee's Day, and we were also keeping an eye on both activities. But right now we'll take you back to Joe Ageo, who has an amazing conversation currently ongoing. Joe?
All right, thank you very much, Zinzi. And just before people start throwing stones at PLO, that actually is a parody account. The last time I checked, he wasn't doing anything on Twitter. I'll need to check whether he has since started. But that definitely is someone who really would like to be Dr. PLO. So just to make that right. Thank you very much, gentlemen. So I have saved you from responding from that. So let's take this home. Professor Nyong'o, one of the people there said that your manifesto seems to be about doing what you believe Jubilee hasn't done rather than totally new things. Then he says very few details.
Well, as I said, and
like
I hope...
what is fundamentally different, because that's how I want us to end this conversation, what is fundamentally different with your manifesto from what we have seen from the same old things that we've seen, promises every election cycle?
Well, the difference is that Jubilee has been in power and should have accounted for their performance and told us what they're going to do better when they performed so poorly. Our responsibility is we not only want to do new things, but do them better and different from the way Jubilee has been doing them, with much more commitment to values, the values of nationhood, the values of inclusivity, the values of national cohesion. In that regard, we are committed to implementing the Justice, Truth and Justice Commission, which Jubilee has completely ignored. This nation cannot be healed without reconciliation, without coming to terms with the past. Jubilee wants to ignore that and think that they can transform a nation which has not healed itself. That's a fundamental difference, Joe, because without a strong value foundation, other things will fall. We have seen, for example, a nation like Libya was doing great in terms of development. We have seen great empires crumble because there's very little solid value foundation. Our national anthem created very good values for us.
Isn't that what the 2010 Constitution was about?
Again, the 2010 Constitution has created very good, but unfortunately we have people in power who don't believe in that Constitution, who have done everything they can to trash that Constitution, both in word and deed, in terms of what they do, in terms of how they live, in terms of how they treat major institutional governance. And I've given several examples. We have a bicameral parliament. The president, to begin with, until we went to court, did not want to recognize the Senate, which means that it was a constitutional travesty to sign laws, bills into law without them being heard. That's just one example.
Amos, he says that it is time to go back to the basics, that basically our country is in the wrong direction, that we need to go back to the values. That
yes, we all agree we need values, and I think that's what we discussed yesterday. That's what Jubilee is about, what is inculcating a culture of responsibility.
But it says Jubilee
openness
hasn't done that.
Performance
Jubilee
of
has tried to subvert
all
the
these Huduma centers is about giving service to the person, right? It's not about creating positions for people. It's about getting closer to the Wananchi. And so long as people get the services, so long as there's transparency in the procurement processes, then you as good as done in terms of.
So is that the difference that you believe in doing things, and he's saying
no?
They
believe in some, living in some utopian cloud cuckoo land. That's basically what this manifesto is all about. Creating the impression to the Kenyans that they are moving from where they are to some utopian world out there, right? And which is not anchored on reality, right?
See, the trouble is...
And I think...
So is there an ideological difference between yourselves and NASA, from what you can perceive?
Yes, as clear day and night.
And what is that?
Because ours is reality. You know, it's based on the reality on the ground. We see the problem, we provide solutions. They don't see the they see the problem, they try to look at it in terms of theoretical.
But what is that?
Yeah?
What the ideology that informs that? What exactly do you want to achieve in the end?
For
what
us,
kind of country?
For us, what we want is improve the livelihoods of Kenyans, improve the society, improve by not just improve, transform society, transform the nation, transform lives. Right? That is where our
Prof, is there an ideological difference?
A big ideological difference. For example, they don't even distinguish between state and nation. That's why they're not committed to values of nation building.
Yeah.
So they go into government and they try to run government only two communities, forgetting that there's a nation. No. They're forgetting that there's a nation to be built. The government must reflect the face of that nation to be built through inclusivity. Let me finish, because I left him to talk. Now he doesn't want me to talk. You see, so it's only when you have committed the value of nationhood that then in the state you can have the practice of inclusivity that tells you that you're going to build a nation. That face of the nation must be seen in government. So that's why I told Kimunya yesterday, first of all, you must be committed to certain values, like the Constitution has values. Then you get that Constitution, you use laws to construct the state. They are, for example, when he talks about values, he talks about technocracy, he talks about Huduma centers. Huduma centers is an instrument for implementing certain values through service delivery. If you don't have those values, the kind of services you deliver will not promote those values. But for example, you can have a Huduma center which is not accessible to all Kenyans because they don't have means of transport to get there. You must think holistically about how to deliver services in creating a nation.
Let's be fair. We cannot have a Huduma center in every house. No. It must be centrally placed and people must make sacrifice to get there. But I think...
Then create roads to be fair, there, not bridges which collapse.
To be fair to the Jubilee government about this inclusiveness, because it's something that is said it's about a two-tribe government. Look at the cabinet, all right? Just look at the cabinet. But even areas that predominantly voted for ODM. Look at Nyanza. Where is the minister for only one?
Only one.
Yes, but they only so few.
So one.
The cabinet issue is a long story.
Yes, I know.
But look at the security services.
It's a long story.
If the security agencies were meeting,
yes,
the Director of Intelligence.
We need to end this.
Let's
the NSIS. If you correct it, Director of Intelligence, the NSIS, the Director of Criminal Investigation Department, you name them. You'll find that it's a two-tribe affair.
Okay.
But just take them.
But
list them.
Okay, the next time I call you,
that's very important. That department will not reflect the space of Kenya.
Professor, we have to end this show.
But I think, let me just say...
I'm sorry, but we have run out of time. We really have to go. Yes, this story doesn't end. Why? Because it's about manifesto, and this is about vision for the country. Does it make sense to you? There are two of them that have been laid on the table over the last 48 hours, and the choice is yours. Over the next 7 weeks or so, we'll be looking at them, and you also should get a chance to read each one of them line by line just to know what the two political formations are going to put out there. There are many other people out there also who are running for office, and I think it would be a good idea for you to do that. So thank you very much for watching Kivumbi2017. We've been on air from 6 p.m. This was a special edition, special manifesto edition, I should say that. And a big thank you to the two gentlemen who agreed to do a rematch tonight. And it seems that they are not done. So we'll call them another day. Have a lovely evening as these two gentlemen sort out their little match that's going on here. Thank you very much, gentlemen.